What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the J Rock Show here from the SimWorld TV studios in the great state of Houston, Texas. I am your host, as always, Jason J.K. Candell, and Hoops Dairy has delivered the madness. My head is spinning. I've been all over the place the last couple of days. You can ask my friends. You can ask my loved ones. They've hardly heard from me. My phone's been on do not disturb, do not distract me while I'm watching Hoopsteria, and it's been quite the time. But this would not be an episode of the J Rock Show without a guest joining me, and I've quite the guest for you all today. My first three-time guest, and that's Mr. Dre Pope, formerly of the Bay Area Breakers, soon to be head coach of the question mark. I think that's something we'll get into later in the show, but welcome back to the show, Coach Pope. It's great to have you here. How are we doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm glad to be your first, three-time guest. It's always a pleasure, talking to you and chopping it up with you. Hoop Stereo been, crazy as hell, but I'm ready to, jump right into it.
Oh yeah, tell me about it, man. I've There's been so much drama and so much badness. We were talking about this a little bit before the show began. That we were talking about some of our predictions for some of the games of the last couple of days. We've been exchanging texts all day, and it has been quite the time. I was on the call for two of them on Tuesday, Wednesday in Madison Square Garden. Pretty surreal for me knowing that I am a native New Yorker and that I grew up a Knicks fan. I kind of idolized the Garden as the basketball mecca throughout my life. So being there to call Duke no less, that's something that never really gets old.
Mm.
But that's not what I came to talk to you about. What we came to talk about was that last episode of the J Rock Show was my bracket with Mr. Phoenix, but we didn't really get to react to everything yet. I'm sure you've seen my tweets or some of my articles, but the first round of Hoopsteria certainly delivered the madness. 2024 Hoopsteria was all chalk, and 2025 Hoopsteria has been all not chalk. And there's been some debate about it, whether the upsets are good or bad for SimWorld U, or if parity is a good thing, or if it's just a sign of the times. And I just think that it's a sign of the times. We're in a Hoopsteria field now where SimWorld U doesn't have mid majors taking up those lower seeded spots now, and now it's all power conference teams cannibalizing one another. These teams, like, think about, I don't know, 15th seeded Wichita State or 16th seeded Virginia. These are very, very good teams that their records were not good throughout the season or throughout or but these are teams that have talent and are still teams you don't want to face in Hoopsteria, that have plenty of, like, Johnny Baldwin, like, ever on a 16 seed team. Are we kidding? That's terrifying.
Man, when I tell you, it's crazy. Like you said, there's no mid majors. So it's still gonna be, we're still gonna have the top teams, your Dukes, your Kentuckys, your, Texas, Alabamas. But with it being, all power conferences, you have to come ready or you're gonna get sent home. We all know who Stereo is, you win or you go home.
Yeah, like, these teams, you can't really overlook them. You We saw Kentucky go down to Oregon in the opening round. We saw two 16 seeds lose. Texas to Marquette and Virginia Tech to Virginia. Rivalry game did not serve them well at all. And then UConn beats Kansas. Oregon beats Kentucky. Wichita State beats Georgetown. 3 15s lose. The Midwest loses their top 5 seeds. North Carolina goes down. Arkansas goes down. Like, this is drama. We're at a point now where we're seeing SMU and St. Mary's playing for a spot in the grade 8. People are saying it's bad for the sport. Like, we love the drama and the Cinderella stories, and ultimately, Hoopsteria crowning a champion isn't about who's the best team. It's about who's the hottest, and that's how it's always been, Coach Pope.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, like coming into that, you're 0-0. Seeing don't mean nothing because anybody can get it at any day, of the week. So, like I said, you got to be on your P's and Q's. Um, it's always going to be upsets. As far as this hoopsteria, we seen a lot of upsets. You know, I'm still shocked by Duke,
Yeah.
and I had them going to the championship game. Like my whole bracket is busted, like for real. But I mean, yeah, like it is what it is. You gotta want to go home. You gotta have your mental straight more than anything.
Oh yeah. And it's insane been being watching it. It's been insane to cover it. Like, this hoopsteria has been no joke. Where these top teams, you got to be great. Cooper Flag's in foul trouble for 5 minutes. St. Mary's goes on a run. They wind up winning by 20. Jameson Johnson misses one shot. They lose. Dylan Harper misses one shot. They lose. It it shows you that every string of possessions matter, and that it's kind of a game of runs. It's not like baseball game of runs, but you understand what I'm saying, right?
Oh yes, I mean, like you said, it's a game of runs. So one missed shot that can easily turn into a 10-0 run.
Yeah,
So you got to, like I said, you got to have your mental straight. You got to be mentally strong in that moment, to withstand a run, so you can go on a run of your own, or you're doomed. Just like you said, the whole Cooper Flag in foul trouble, and knowing that St. Mary's beat Duke earlier in the season, it kind of shouldn't be a surprise. But we also know that that's a glaring weakness of Flag, of his penchant for you know fouling, and St. Mary's turned that, and they just ran away with it. Every time Duke tried to come back, St. Mary's had an answer for it. You know.
yeah. I get what you're saying. It's a lot of Duke. It's a um like Duke just didn't have a guy like Jeremiah Minor to provide that 3 point consistency for him. They struggled with 3 point shooting. St. Mary's was lights out. Kai Newby was lights out. Shout out to that freshman. I know you know him pretty well from his SimWorld prep days. Like, that's what this is. You're seeing a lot of freshmen kind of make the most of the moment. We've seen it with Cam Jones. We've seen it with Suno Chapa. And there's been a lot of upsets throughout this tournament, but I'm most impressed by the poise that this freshman class is showing outside of the obvious Cooper Flags and Justin Bells.
Yeah, I've been most impressed about by D'Angelo Jordan. He was good when he was Lakeshore Drive and somewhere prep, and coming into this season, it's been talks about him, but it hasn't been much of a spotlight on him, and he's been doing excellent for Illinois. I mean, they beat Minnesota, they beat Marquette, and they got a date with Michigan in the Super 16. So, D'Angelo Jordan, I am really high on. And also, I want to shout out to my former player, Dom Hardaway. He's been, a big help, for Kai Newby and St. Mary's. So, I just want to give that shout out to him.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing it myself. I got to see it firsthand at the Garden for Dime Hardaway. He got hot early and 16 points for him. Didn't live up to the nickname Dime Hardaway though. Only had one assist, but I'm not really. I'm not really gonna bash your player. I'm just calling it like I see it, man. But
Hey, I'm, go ahead.
Coach Pope, like there, it's been upset mania. I know people are calling it bad for the sport, but the fact of the matter is, you got to adjust to who you're playing, and these teams are coming to play a lot more than mid majors are. Competition's getting stiffer at every level, and I think that a lot of these blue bloods are not prepared for it. And the fact that John Shire's Duke team has lost back to back years before the Super 16 means that his seat could be getting a little warm going into next season.
I can see in a world that happen. Coaching matters in these situations in this, this tournament. Every adjustment, every counter adjustment, is crucial. And we've seen some of these crazy coaching decisions that I would never, make in a game. Um, but I think you're kind of right as far as his seat being a little bit warm. And he got some, more recruits coming in next season, and so they just gonna have to like get on their A game. They can't have another, back to back um second round exit,
Yeah,
and they're supposed to be one of the top teams in SimWorld U. So I think this off season they got to get it together. He got to get more shooting in there and try to work with Cooper Flag on limiting his foul trouble.
yeah. But now,
But
now, now you got Ivanov, Andre Ivanov coming in. You got Big Vic. You got Flag. You got Pablo Guzman. Like this is a good, very, very good Duke team that they'll have next season. They should be favorites yet again. But this is kind of why I'm always apprehensive with Duke. They always have hype, but they're always too star driven. We saw it in 2019 with Zion Williamson. We're seeing it again with this Duke team. We they lost by 20 to a St. Mary's team that like looked pedestrian against Texas A&M. They got pounded. They looked outmanned, outgunned in every aspect of the word. And this is a St. Mary's team where I'm not even sure they can beat SMU.
mm, yeah, they do face SMU. Um, but you gotta understand too, like everybody knows, St. Mary beat Duke early in the season. So coming into this to the game with Duke, they had the confidence. They knew they beat them before, and that was they beat them with Jeremiah Minor playing, and he wasn't playing, and that's really their only reliable shooter. So it was easy for them to play the zone and rattle Duke.
Yeah,
Thus, Duke losing by 21 points.
yeah. You make a fantastic point. Like Duke just doesn't have a lot of supportive scoring. Victorious Ilgauskas is not really an offensive, really refined offensive talent. He's kind of raw on that end of the floor, and it's defensively where he really shines. So that just kind of stands out to me a little bit, Coach Pope.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I think, like we said, they got a good recruiting class coming in, and I think Guzman, he can help with that regard.
Yeah,
Um,
and
I'm not even sure. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
no worries, no worries. Keep on going, my man. Don't mean to cut you off.
My bad. I gotta look. I'm not sure if Marner is a senior this year or a junior, but if he's a junior and he comes back, I think him and Guzman they can make a good 1-2, shooting punch. You know what I mean?
Yes, I'm with that. We're seeing some coaching changes. We saw the reigning champs Miami get trounced by UNLV on Wednesday. Like both both stars for Miami, Bianco and Macklemore were held below 10 points. They lost by 32. Disappointing showing for the reigning champs, but this is an UNLV team that's really going to give Alabama a great fight in the Super 16. And between that game, I'm not in on Iowa. You all know that. I think the winner of that UNLV Bama game goes to the quad.
I might digress. Um, I think UNLV do have a really good shot at being Alabama. I like that team. They've been looking good in this tournament. Nat Hawkins, um, Jarrell Bluchamp, they've been they've been doing their thing, and I think they have the pieces and they have um the right tempo to give Alabama trouble.
Yes.
Who they facing the Great Eight between that, I do think they're gonna face Iowa. I think Iowa will beat Auburn, and then it'll be Iowa and Arizona in the Super 16.
Yeah.
And then I do think Iowa pulls it off, and I think they go on to face UNLV. It depends on, and like I say, either if it's Alabama or if it's UNLV, it's just gonna depend on who's gonna step up besides Sherwood.
Yeah.
If that comes to fruition.
Yeah. Then we still got some more games to go over. Like there's a lot to go over, but let's talk about Michigan Rutgers. Lorenzo Phenom. We know about the character concerns. SimWorld is investigating an incident that occurred between him, Demarion Mitchell, and two fans in attendance after they beat Rutgers after Dylan Harper missed that go-ahead shot. Sources told me that Phenom hurled racial slurs at the fans and Mitchell, and parties had to be restrained in the tunnel. But I've just been given word that there is more to this story. That he was arguing with his father after the win, and there was a leaked photo of the altercation in the tunnel in Dallas. In Dallas, but Phenom's dad was the one who was really the perpetrator of the situation. I still think that this is a guy that I'm so concerned about his ego. We've seen it at every step of his career, and I know you're a coach, so I would love to hear your perspective on this.
You know, I'm not surprised. I know we heard about Phenom. I know, he has little incidents. And we found out, during his prep days, a lot of it involved his father. Um, Phenom needs to cut off his father. That's my take on it. He's gonna be going to the SWBA. I believe he's gonna leave after this season. That game, it drove his stock up. I can say that. But his father, I feel like it's not the same situation, but this could go down the same road as, John Morant's father, you know, being a nuisance. And ultimately, it's going to cost Phenom.
We literally
That's
just saw what is it, 3 weeks ago, how this affected Shedeur Sanders in the SWFL. It's different. His dad's just annoying and entitled and talkative, but it's still a nuisance, and that's something teams don't want to deal with. A nuisance is a nuisance. Doesn't matter what the context is, Coach Pope.
Yeah, I get that. I think the Sador Sanders thing, that's kind of different, but in a sense, you're right. You know, they don't want to, you know, have that sort of, sideshow. That's like I said. That's why I said Phenom, when he gets to the NBA, to the SWBA, he needs to cut his father off.
Yeah,
As far as having giving him access to, you know, to the, going to the games and whatnot, because he can't have that. This is not a LeVar Ball situation. You know what I mean? Can't have that.
yeah, you're right. And I have one final question for you before I get into the burning question I have for you about your future. And this is we had the draft lottery on Monday night. Mavericks are picking first, Spurs second. Mavericks are looking for a franchise complement alongside Anthony Davis. Maybe there's some changes with Kyrie Irving. What route should the Mavericks go with this number one pick?
Either CKC or Jalen Snow. They already got bigs with Anthony Davis and Derek Lively. They got um, PJ Washington and other guys too. The front court is cluttered. So I and with Kyrie, still recovering from the ACL injury, I think you are going to go the guard wing route, which I said either CKC or Jalen Snow makes the best, you know, makes the most sense to me.
Interesting. I would love to see them draft a Jameson Johnson and pair him with Anthony Davis, the all Kentucky front court. But I think that Cooper Kingy Cross does make the most sense here. I would love to see Jalen Snow. I think people are starting to reconsider him with this number one pick now that Dallas has it, which is pretty awesome to see. But what about the Spurs? Why would they draft a big man alongside Victor Wembanyama? Like, it's a very interesting situation, and I hope to have you on again to talk about it kind of more in depth.
Oh, I would definitely be on to talk more. But with the Spurs, Wemby can, he can play inside and outside. So with that second pick, either they get Jamison Johnson, they get Lemarian Sherwood, or they package that pick to get Giannis.
That's what I think they're gonna do. I think they're gonna package it to get Giannis. That's what I've been saying to everybody, and I think Giannis and Wemby would be so much fun. The SWBA having their two most marketable international stars on the same team, barring Jokic, barring Luka, is exactly what they want for the growth of the sport to international audiences. So I'm with you there. I think it makes sense from a business standpoint. They think it makes sense from a viewership standpoint. Think it makes sense from a franchise standpoint. So everybody wins. But I want to end this episode with the bomb question. You have offers now from Wake Forest and South Carolina. You've definitely have a difficult decision on your hands. We know you'll be coaching college ball next year. What do you have to say about your next chapter and where you and is there any information you could give the people on your research process or kind of like what you've kind of been thinking about as you wait to make this decision?
Well, I already made my decision, but before I get to that, I've been uh just talking with both officials from both schools, talking with my coach in person, my team and whatnot, talking with my family because they're gonna have to move with me too.
Of course.
Um, I've been talking with my trusted friends, in the coaching circles and about one or two recruits that you know linked to or whatever for SWU, and just been going over everything, just been doing deep research, and one team makes sense to me,
Okay.
and that team is South Carolina, and the reason for that is because they already have a building block with Isaiah James, who's one of the most elite defenders in SWU, and Keandre Baldridge. Um, he's a great post player. Um, he'll slide right into my scheme, like that. And then they have Joey Justice coming in from ATLians, and he's a really good shooter, and he can play that. He can play the two or three easily. And so just building upon that, it just made the most sense to me.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Dre Pope very well could be the next head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. He is the offer. I said I expected him to land there, and I get why. So congratulations. I don't know if this is an official announcement or just you talking to a trusted source, but either way, I think that it makes a lot of sense for you coaching in the SEC with an established core. You can kind of make that program your own. I get why people wanted you at Wake Forest, but if you're looking to kind of establish success immediately, you have more room to do that with a team that just made Hoopsteria. Even though they got pounded, it is still a team that just made Hoopsteria.
Yes, yes, it's already established core, and I can tell you, well, Wherever I go, we're never scoring 39 points. That's dead. So
And final question: are you gonna, once you're a SimWorld U coach, you're gonna start? How often are you going to be dipping your toe into the recruiting pool of the Bay Area Breakers? Are you gonna be pursuing guys like Jiggly and guys like that?
yeah, oh yeah, of course. I'm a that's my pipeline. I'm gonna tap into that, but I'm not gonna just limit myself to Bay Area because I do have connections around the league, and I'm gonna use that to my advantage. I'm gonna always be scouting prep. I'm gonna, when they had these tournaments, I'm gonna be there as much as I can, but
Yeah,
it's gonna be all over.
yeah. And do you have any closing thoughts before we end this episode? Whether it's about your own journey, about Hoopsteria, anything you kind of want to talk to the ladies and gentlemen at home about?
I appreciate, all the congratulations. It's been an honor to get these offers. It's been a long time coming, and I just hope to establish myself and hit the ground running to the program that I choose. Most likely it'll be South Carolina, but
Well, you hear.
I'm just ready.
Mhm. I'm excited for you. I know how hard you work, and I know what you've kind of overcome with the whole Trey Hyman situation and the media quickly turning on you. But you've done a lot to kind of change that perception. So I know if there's anyone who appreciates it more, it's someone that's been low and is now at the top of the mountain. So much respect to you for that.
Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you. I really appreciate it, man.
yeah. And you want to give your people the your remaining national championship pick before we close this off?
Man, okay. The way this has been set up, you know what? I'm a ball out. I got UCLA beating Louisville.
Okay. A lot of offense in that national championship. Coach Pope has spoken. Coach Skinny's probably very happy with that take right there. But that's going to do it for this episode of the J Rock Show. Coach Pope, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about SimWorld U, Hoopsteria, your future. We got through the SWBA even a little bit. We got through so much in this episode, and it's always a good time to have you on. You're always welcome back. You can you know, you're one of the more welcome guests. So I hope to have you back on soon. But for all of you at home, I appreciate you tuning in to yet again another episode of the J Rock Show. I'm your host, Jason J.K. Candell, and I'm saying from the SimWorld TV studios, have a great week, everybody. See you all soon.